So ever since the election happened, we've been told that the massive problem was fake news. Now, what's weird is I noticed immediately, like, wait, how come if this was the biggest problem in the election, we almost never talked about it before the election? You go back. Here, I challenge all the journalists out there, all the fact checkers, PolitiFact, Associated Press, whoever you are, go ahead, do the analysis of it. How many mentions of fake news were there before Election Day and how many after? Before Election Day, almost never mentioned. After the election, all of a sudden, fake news. No, the Democrats lost the election because of fake news.
Fake news. Have you been hearing about this lately, the fake news? You have to be careful, though. You really do. Before you share a story that you see online, make sure it's from a trustworthy source, like me.
This was a week where the problems of so-called fake news, often just a name for an out-and-out lie or unproven claim, were evident once again, and this time led to alarming consequences. Hari Srinivasan joins us from our New York studio tonight with a look at the latest concerns and the beginning of a periodic series on the subject.
Viral conspiracy theories masquerading as news spread at incredible speeds throughout the election cycle across social platforms like Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, and 4chan. But on December 4th came a very real measure of their impact. A 28-year-old man from North Carolina entered Comet Ping Pong Pizza in Washington, D.C., armed with an assault rifle, claiming he wanted to, quote, self-investigate a fast-spreading theory.
Wow!
It's now clear that so-called fake news can have real-world consequences. This isn't about politics or partisanship. Lives are at risk. It's a danger that must be addressed, and addressed quickly. It's imperative that leaders in both the private sector and the public sector step up to protect our democracy and innocent lives.
So, Mika, what do you think about Hillary Clinton coming out and talking about fake news?
I'm not sure. I'm really sad about how things have happened. Honestly, that's what I think of.
I mean, the context, of course, is what happened up in
I know
Northwest.
The context.
And apparently she did call this guy. And, you know, I don't think fake news contributed to her loss. I'm not saying that.
That's what she suggested.
I know, and I think that's wrong. I mean, I think it played a role in the conversation in the election. I don't think that's disputable. But it's a big problem, right? I mean, it is a huge in our industry.
It's been a big problem for about 10 years.
Yeah, well, it's becoming a radically big problem.
No,
you haven't seen fake.
Actually,
have you logged on?
The ability of these stories to spread and get hundreds of thousands of views, and they are not even close to reality. I mean, some of the stuff is really insane.
All right, Steve, this whole investigation also begs the question, of course, would Trump still have won without Russian intervention?
Yeah, I know. I think that's a dangerous road to go down, to suggest that voters were swayed by one specific thing, especially that some nefarious cyber attack from Russia. I mean, if you look at exit polling, you look at what people were voting for this year, there were a lot of issues that voters were voting for, whether it was the economy, whether it was foreign policy, whether it was just sentiment toward each of the candidates, whether they wanted change or wanted status quo. And so I think to suggest that Russia, unless there's proof of them actually hacking or getting people to the polls that shouldn't have been going to the polls, I think it's a dangerous road to go down to suggest that this was the reason why Donald Trump won.
Hold it now. But they don't know it, and neither do you. You don't know that. You don't know that the government. I think it's really irresponsible for you to say you know that the Putin government did this.
You know what is irresponsible, Tucker, for you to make that claim without looking at the evidence, and more importantly,
you can't say that you know the Putin government did that.
More importantly, for the president-elect today. To say that he doesn't know whether the Russians. You're on
the Intel Committee. Let me just ask you one final question. Can you look right into the camera and say, I know for a fact the government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of John Podesta's email?
Absolutely. The government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of our institution and the dumping of information.
Of John Podesta's email.
Not only in the United States, but also in Europe.
Okay, you're not. You know what? You're dodging.
And Tucker,
no, look and say, I know they did. John Podesta's emails. They hacked those.
And I think that Ronald Reagan will be rolling over his grave at your carrying water for the Kremlin.
I'm not carrying water for the. You're a sitting member of Congress on the Intel Committee, and you can't say they hacked.
You're gonna have to move your show to RT Russian television because
you know what?
This
That's
is perfect.
Just so
this is perfectly
beneath your
placed.
office because it's so dumb and you're being duplicitous. I'm asking you, did they hack Podesta's emails? And you can't say it.
Personal insults like that, Tucker.
You just said I was carrying. You said I was carrying water for Putin.
Is Vladimir Putin riding on a horse? Shirtless. That's what he does. He rides shirtless on a horse.
That's his jam.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty macho thing to do, right?
Right.
Let's zoom in. He's got a tattoo that says, "Dance like no one's watching."
Really? In English?
In English.
Weird.
The Washington Post is distancing itself from an expert group it used as a source for an article on fake news and so-called Russian propaganda. The paper is responding to widespread criticism that the report it based the article on was flawed and that the group behind it should not be trusted. Well, the initial article, the Washington Post, accused 200 US news sites of being, quote, routine peddlers of Russian propaganda. The list it was referring to was put together by a little-known collective called Prop or Not, which claims to be made up of independent political analysts and computer scientists. An editor's note later appeared above the article pointing out that the paper doesn't vouch for the group.
When some journalists began to look into this mysterious group and their methodology, they found that simply exhibiting a pattern of beliefs outside the political mainstream was enough to risk finding themselves on that blacklist. When they asked this group, Prop or Not, to explain why popular websites like Drudge Report were on their list, Prop or Not had nothing better to say. Quote, they refer audiences to sort of Russian stuff, end quote. The Washington Post now writes it never vouched for the findings of that group, Prop or Not. It is trying to distance itself from this group, obviously following the backlash. But if you look at their article, it referred to them as independent researchers. It gave them credibility, which in effect validated their smearing of some 200 alternative news outlets. The Washington Post, published this article as this bombshell story to expose fake news, but it appears in this case the Washington Post ended up generating fake news.
A lot of buzz about this fake news. You were the subject of a fake news story.
Oh yeah, what they say? I was running for president. No, I voted. What they say?
You switched your support.
I switched. Yeah.
What do you make of all the fake news and it affects?
If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed.
So what do you do?
That's a great question. What is the long-term effect of too much information? One of the effects is the need to be first, not even to be true anymore. So what a responsibility you all have to tell the truth, not just to be first, but to tell the truth. We live in a society now where it's just first. Who cares? Get it out there. We don't care who it hurts. We don't care who we destroy. We don't care if it's true. Just say it, sell it. Anything you practice, you'll get good at. Including BS.